Chapter 5, Episode 15. Diagnosis of a predisposition and its consequences. The door to the culture room adjacent to the laboratory in the other world was slightly ajar. This is the room where the last time I checked the door did not open. Pharma tensed at the subtle change. Even if someone were inside, Pharma has no divine power or divine art now. This space is subject to the laws of physics on Earth. The area that can come and go in the laboratory of the other world is expanding. The area that can be entered and exited in the laboratory of the other world has expanded. It is not in the same state as when we came here before. This door has a door closer that is designed to close by itself. Pharma stepped into the culture room, being careful not to let the door close on its own. After confirming that the inside was unoccupied, he dutifully changed into slippers in the area where shoes are prohibited, as is his habit. The interior of the culture room-like space was lit in organically and blue by whitish fluorescent lights and UV lamps on clean benches, and the sound of equipment motors echoed through the room. When I opened the door of the incubator, which was shaped like a small refrigerator, I found petri dishes containing various types of cells neatly lined up inside. Looking at the date on the petri dish, I saw that the cells had been cultured on the day of Yakutani's death. After 2 years, they even felt nostalgic. We need culture goods, don't we? Shall I bring them back? Pharma lost track of the laboratory equipment for culture and special reagents which are difficult to synthesize in material creation, and packed them in his bag. He also brought out stock of cultured cells in frozen form from the freezer. Research on lethal familial insomnia requires a culture environment for neural stem cells. Isolation of these takes time and effort, so we bring them with us. Put them in the culture room. Does that mean I can go out into the hallway next to it? If his memory serves him correctly, there should be another door further back in the culture room, leading to a corridor in the research building. He tried to go through the culture room and open the door to the hallway. However, the door leading from the culture room to the corridor did not budge when I pushed or pulled it. It was as if the space was physically closed. Tilting her head, Pharma stretched out and peeked through a window set into the door to see the space where the corridor should have been. Behind the glass, the corridor that should have been there was dark. For a moment, I had a faint hope that I could return to the world from which I came, but upon closer inspection, the shades of the abyss were rotating homogeneously in one direction at a slow pace. It was as if this laboratory were inside some elaborate contraption and we were looking at the heart of the device from inside it. The spinning space, and the corridor, there is no way out after all? What the hell is the space beyond this? The thought that the space was destabilizing deprived Pharma of the energy to go outside. He had no choice but to turn on his heel and return to the laboratory. There was only one way out. If the whole space is changing, then maybe I'm changing too? Pharma suddenly thought to himself and approached his former self, Yakutani, who was sleeping on the sofa. He wondered if there was anything that had changed. As she gazed at him intently, Yakutani's eyelids twitched in rapid succession. Pharma was startled and backed away. His consciousness is shallow, more than before. She tried to call out, "Hey," but her voice was silent. The sound did not conduct through the air. When she tried to touch Yakutani, Pharma's hands penetrated her body as if she had become a ghost. Oh my God! Pharma can touch things in this room, but not Yakutani's body. But she cannot touch Yakutani's own body. Even Pharma's voice doesn't come out well in this space. The person he was before he died, who was a workaholic. I'll try to think of a way to wake him up. Then how about this? Thinking of this, Pharma opens the door of the ultra-low temperature freezer for sample storage in the laboratory. Beep beep beep. Immediately after the temperature rise buzzer sounded from the freezer, Kanji Yakutani awoke. Whoa, was there a freezer malfunction? Then he became distraught. The total loss of stored samples due to freezer failure, which is a fatal event for a pharmacologist. Oh, I woke up. Ha ha, I am me after all. Yakutani, who ran up to the freezer without passing by the bitterly smiling Pharma, apparently did not see Pharma. Rather than being ignored, it was as if he couldn't even sense her presence. "You left the freezer door open?" "Me? I didn't." "Who did?" Yakutani carefully checked that there was nothing wrong with the freezer. And seeing that the clock in his room was not yet at the scheduled wake-up time, he rolled onto the couch again and tried to put on his sleeping bag. That's when. "Oh. What is it?" Yakutani slowly looked around the laboratory, scratching his head with a face as if he had been pinched by a fox. Pharma wondered if he had noticed that the interior of the laboratory had changed drastically. After all, several important laboratory instruments had been stolen by Pharma. Even Yakutani's mobile phone had been stolen. In addition, the reagents that he had carefully prepared were also missing. "Hey, you see this? I stole it." Pharma approached Yakutani and waved his hand, but he could not make eye contact with him. And the stolen goods that Pharma is holding in her hand seemed to be invisible to Yakutani's eyes. "What's going on? Not only can't he see me, but he can't see what I'm holding in my hand either." While Pharma was at a loss, the alarm of the stopwatch that had triggered Pharma's return to the real world last time went off. This was the cue for the entire laboratory to exert pressure to purge Pharma out of the lab. Pharma clutched his luggage, ready to be purged. Sheesh, time's up. Immediately after he meditated, he was thrown into the holy spring and landed on the ice that had been on the surface of the water before he entered the laboratory. The divine power that had been lost in the other world returned gradually to Pharma's entire body. He checks his own body to see if there is anything unusual about it. Last time, when he left the laboratory, the divine power became stronger and his body was transparent, but it is not transparent. If anything, I feel that his divine power is decreasing. I think it's more like his divine power is decreasing. Not that guy, Yakutani, me. Is that why? Last time when they infiltrated the laboratory, Yakutani struggled to death and Pharma's consciousness was forcibly purged from the other world. But this time Pharma had awakened Yakutani by playing some tricks like ringing a buzzer, so some casual relationship had changed and heart failure did not occur in Yakutani. And perhaps he did not die. At least not while Pharma was watching over him. Could it be that now, in the same timeline, a route has been created in which Yakutani survived? No way, he didn't die like that and went back to his daily life. The next day, he was still immersed in research. Pharma, deflated, still ponders. If you keep doing that, eventually one of them will fail. So, will the body of the Pharma from the other world be transparent or not? But I have to go back there just one more time. Now that we have planted the genetic analysis of Lot and others, including Emmerich, in that lab, we need to go back and get the results. We can't afford to be frightened. Pharma decided to re-enter the laboratory without delay. As long as Yakutani did not die, the passage of time could have some effect on Pharma. After placing the stolen goods on the shore of the holy spring, Pharma dived into the holy spring again and tried to re-enter the other world from the backside. This is the third time today alone that he has entered the other world. When I held up my treasured staff ID card to the card key authentication system, it took quite a while to open the door. Also, the door's range of motion was gradually narrowing, and it was no longer possible to open it fully. I had a bad feeling about this, but I still managed to pry the door open, and found Kanji Yakutani was sleeping again, wrapped in a sleeping bag on the sofa. Pharma then looks at the clock in the room. 3:50 a.m. Not 4:10 a.m. Exclamation mark. It's going forward, 20 minutes. From the moment Pharma entered the lab, the clock started ticking. This time he has only 40 minutes to stay. I don't want to take the risk of transforming this other world any further. I don't want to wake up Yakutani and leave him there. Damn it, how can I analyze the gene expression data in 40 minutes? Impossible, we have to analyze it outside the room. The genetic analysis that had just been set up was already finished when they re-entered the room. However, it had been less than 10 minutes since Pharma had left the laboratory. In the meantime, the genetic analysis, which should have taken about a week of continuous operation of the analyzer, had been completed. Pharma could only think that a distortion of time and space had occurred. Nevertheless, he immediately copied the analysis results to a large storage device and attempted to take them out. Oops, I know, right? Data is too big. The progress bar in the dialog box that was copying the data was slow to move. Will it take 40 minutes to finish copying? Will it take 40 minutes? In my experience, it takes more than an hour. The results of whole genome analysis is a large amount of data, and a single analysis can take up to 100 gigabytes. It would take more than an hour to make a copy of the data. We had to prioritize the data and copy the least amount of data first, starting with what was necessary. While running the copy, the data was run through analysis software to compress the data size as much as possible. Even though they could not obtain all the information, they succeeded in copying only the necessary portions. Then, before the time limit was reached and he was forcibly purged. That is, just before Yakutanya began to suffer and died of heart failure, he escaped by himself through the door of the laboratory he had entered and returned to the original other world. At that time, the entrance door was only half open. When the door to the other world was closed, the divine power of the Pharma returned to its original state. "I'm back home," he said. Finally, he could even speak. "The divine power of is too much. You've come back too far. The moment you return to this world, the divine power flows into your body like a dam." "The" is the most common way of saying "I knew it was going to be like this." The amount of divine power amplified to the point of violence. The nausea, dizziness, and consciousness began to fade away. The influx of divine power knows no bounds. "This is bad, this is bad." Pharma felt chills. The sensation of being compressed and filled with more divine power than she could tolerate was so bad that she wanted to die. The transparency of the skin begins and progresses. Pharma, feeling threatened with annihilation due to the explosive influx of divine power, rummages through her bag. She felt the threat of annihilation due to the explosive influx of divine power, and rummaged through her bag. She pulls out all of Solomon's charms. He then put the treasured sword he had borrowed from Juliana on his body, and absorbed the divine power into his staff and staff of the medicine god. After going to such lengths to disperse the divine power, he was finally able to return to his normal state. Still, it is not that it does not look a little more transparent than usual. "I managed to become human again, didn't I?" Pharma once again realized that he was a monster, that he was not of this world. Now, he was definitely on the verge of extinction. He had a clear image of what it would be like to disappear from this world. "I need to collect treasures, not only those related to the god of medicine. The treasure can temporarily store divine power. The amount of divine power that can be stored in treasure is very small. It is only a symptomatic treatment." What is that place? Is it an energy spot of divine power where the divine power increases every time you return from that place? Pharma recalled. The darkness that was seen at the back of the culture room was eerily swirling and unfathomable in its depths. It was like a glimpse into the instability of the formation of this world. If I, just before my death, was trapped in a different world, drifting through time and space, repeating the same time endlessly, and the cause and effect kept changing, how many times would the life I received in this other world reflect the results of my attempts? It is depressing to think such things as the odds of me dying and the odds of me not dying overlap. I'm not Schrodinger's cat. Muttering to himself, he returns to the shore of the Holy Spring and grabs the luggage he has smuggled out of the laboratory. The next time I enter the lab, if I start with more advanced time, I won't be able to get in sooner or later. As Pharma looked up at the sky of an unknown world, she worried about the situation. What universe does the sky of this planet lead to? Swallowing down the questions that were surging toward him, he swung his medicine stick in one great swing, shaking off gravity at the same time, and set his sights on the skies of St. Flurbs. Pharma did not return directly from the Holy Spring to the Medici's family, but to his own laboratory at the Imperial College of Medicine. It was late at night and she expected to find no one there, but the lab was unlocked and there were signs of people inside. Ellen was still in the lab, propped up on the desk, asleep. Gently, Pharma draped her coat over her shoulders so that her body would not get cold. "Ellen, you've been waiting for me. I didn't even know if you would come back here." Pharma, not making a sound so as not to wake Ellen, unpacked the luggage she had brought back from the other world in the laboratory and kept the reagents and instruments in a safe place. She starts up her laptop. While the internal battery is still available, he performs the analysis. There is no way to recharge the battery when it runs out, but it will take time and effort to get power from the battery I made by modifying the emergency power supply I brought back from the lab. Estimated time remaining: 10 hours. I'm going to finish it all at once. Mapping the two families from their respective genetic analysis files. Set various parameters and superimpose the sequences on the known genetic information. By comparing the differences, the genetic mutation of the patient can be determined. In other words, to whom in Emmerich's family, and to Lot, is this fatal familial insomnia, a prion disease considered incurable today that causes debilitating death due to progressive insomnia, inherited? Pharma's analysis is based on the digitized genetic information. She does not care about the blanks after her reincarnation. She manipulates commands and writes codes for missing information. The result was in sight. A mutation in codon 178 of the prion gene associated with the disease would make him a carrier of fatal familial insomnia. Emmerich, unfortunately, is definitely a carrier. His second, third, and fourth sons, his eldest daughter, and his second daughter are also carriers. In other words, they're all genetic. Furthermore, when we analyzed the gene expression analysis as well, we found that the second son has already begun to accumulate abnormal prion protein. It is extremely likely that the second son will lose his life within a few years. The situation was more serious than Pharma had thought. The inheritance probability of this disease is usually 50%. But in Emmerich's generation, whether due to his divine powers or as a result of incest in his noble family, the number of carriers of the genetic mutation is 1 in Emmerich's generation. The number of carriers of the genetic mutation is 1.00%. In other words, all of them will develop the disease. Well, then, Lot is. Pharma calmed her agitated mind and unraveled the last data she had been turning in. There are some differences between them and Lot. They have the same ancestry, but one is an aristocrat and the other a commoner. The genes showed that Emmerich's family was related to Lot's. Pharma looked at the data and sighed. Lot, perhaps because of the commoner blood on her mother's side, lacked some of the genes related to the divine arts and was no longer a divine arts user. So now Lot is a commoner. And lethal familial insomnia is. Lot did not inherit it. A fleeting relief. But there was no time to rest on our laurels when it came to Emmerich and his team. Even after the diagnosis was almost confirmed, Pharma pushed herself to stay up all night to decipher the code. The purpose was to find a cure for the disease based on the information from the other genes. He wants to extract as much information as possible until the power goes out. Then, Pharma looked at the power options and nodded her head. Yeah, my PC's battery isn't running down. Maybe it's things brought into our world from other worlds become hidden treasures. The PC was no exception. Perhaps the battery indicator is not abnormal, but inexhaustible. I see. Won't run down. Well, I'm going to bed. Pharma sat down on the sofa and fell asleep there, exhausted. The next day, they had to immediately start searching for a cure for this disease. The disease had already imprinted an inescapable curse on their clan. In my clouded consciousness, I could hear the twittering of birds. The lukewarm sunlight warms my skin. Something soft touches Pharma's arm. When she woke up, Ellen was next to her, her arms entwined around Falma, who was lying on the floor leaning against her. When Pharma woke up, Ellen woke up as well. "Good morning, Pharma." Ellen smiles at him. "Can you see me, Ellen?" "I can see you." Ellen's words made Pharma feel alive at last. Ellen hugged Falma tightly. Ellen's busty breasts crushed Pharma's face, making it hard for her to breathe. "Ellen, I'm in pain, Kuruhiatai." With a past history of survival in outer space, it was no problem for Pharma, especially without breathing, but Pharma stiffened at the abruptness of the situation. Ellen is not the kind of character who would normally do something like this. "I'm so glad you went to a faraway place and came back. When you're gone, In his ear, Ellen chokes on her words, perhaps in tears. "And you coming back, you looked luminous in the dark. You've been reckless, haven't you? Is your body all right?" "Yes, well, sorry." "I'm sorry." Falma also realized that she had caused Ellen heartache, so she decided to be mature and lean on Ellen to be scolded. The most important thing to remember is that the best way to get the most out of your money is to use a good credit card. The next day, the two of them were on their way to the restaurant. The door to the professor's office opened just as Ellen and Pharma were getting cozy. "Oh, good morning." "Oh, excuse me. I didn't see anything." Zoe, the professor's secretary, had dropped her commuter bag. "Wait, Zoe." Pharma panicked when Zoe saw her at an unexpected moment. Neither of them was guilty of anything, but they panicked on the spur of the moment, causing Zoe to get a strange idea of what was going on. "Oh, good morning, Zoe. We were a little busy last night, so we stayed over. We had a lot going on, and I need to go take a bath." Ellen is unconcerned, and she is making a statement that could deepen the misunderstanding. He does not seem to be aware of it. "Oh, I'm so sorry to bother you." Zoe, the secretary who came to work, disappeared for about 30 minutes and did not come back, perhaps because she was concerned about the relationship between Pharma and Ellen. Pharma scrambled around the campus looking for Zoe and had to start work that morning in an awkward atmosphere.